Records showed innumerable aliens fleeing in terror the instant they discovered humans infested Earth. Young explorer Primus stared wide-eyed as his mentor Zor-El brought up the star map, blue-green Earth rotating serenely. "That world could save our race, Primus. Daxam dies as we speak, our world's atmospheric processes failing." Primus reached to lay in a course, but Zor-El grabbed his wrist. "The legends say we must never go there. Unspeakable horrors await any who dare land on Earth." Primus yanked his arm away. "Old tales from ignorant times. Daxam has days left. We go to Earth, or we go extinct." Zor-El hung his head, dreading the truths those legends held as he engaged the hyperdrive. Neither of them knew the planet's dominant species, the savage humans, already watched their approach. The ship shuddered as it emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system containing Earth. Primus leaned forward, his eyes scanning the sensor readouts. He blinked in surprise at the data. "Zor-El, come look at this," he said, pointing to a display. "I'm picking up tachyon emissions from the third planet." Zor-El frowned as he studied the readings. Tachyons, but that would indicate highly advanced technology. The records said this world was primitive. "We should be careful," Primus said. "Engage the cloaking device and take us in slowly." The ship glided forward, slipping invisible against the starry backdrop. As they approached Earth, Primus focused the scanners on the planet's surface. Sprawling cities came into view, glittering webs of light stretching across the continents. Satellites orbited the blue-green world, some bristling with antennae and solar panels. "They have a pre-spaceflight civilization," Primus reported, "but a fairly advanced one with satellites and what looks like primitive nuclear technology." Zor-El shifted uneasily in his seat. "I don't like this, Primus. The legends warned of horrors on this planet. We should move on, find an uninhabited world to colonize instead." Primus shook his head. "We don't have time for that. Daxam has days left at most. These natives may be more advanced than we thought, but they're no threat to us." Suddenly an alarm blared through the cockpit. The ship lurched as Primus wrenched the controls to the side, barely avoiding a missile that streaked past. Targeting lasers painted their hull, flickering over the cloaking field. "What in the name of—" Primus gasped. A sleek, predatory-looking ship shimmered into view nearby, decloaking. It was angular and bristling with weapons, like nothing the Daxamites had ever seen. A voice crackled over the comms, speaking in an unfamiliar language. After a moment, the ship's translator kicked in. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain John Allen of the Earth Defense Force. You have violated Earth sovereign space. Power down and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will be met with lethal force." Primus and Zor-El stared at each other in stunned silence. The humans were far, far more advanced than they had ever imagined, and they did not seem welcoming to visitors. Primus punched the throttle, trying to flee, but the human ship matched their every move. It stayed glued to their tail, herding them toward a massive space station. Weapon turrets studded the station's hull, tracking them as they approached. Zor-El's fingers flew over the comms panel, transmitting an emergency distress call. "Mayday, Mayday, this is the Daxamite vessel." The signal cut to static as the humans jammed their communications. Tractor beams locked onto their ship, dragging them into a docking bay. The ship shuddered as it touched down. Primus reached for his sidearm, but Zor-El shook his head. "It's over, Primus. We can't fight them." The airlock hissed open. Armored human soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. They moved with a speed and precision that stunned the Daxamites. The soldiers wrenched them out of their seats and marched them down the ramp at gunpoint. The humans efficiently stripped them of weapons and gear. One of them barked an order, and Primus found himself shoved into a plain white room. Zor-El stumbled in a moment later. A door slid open, and Captain Allen strode in. He had a hard, uncompromising look on his face as he studied the Daxamites. "I'll get right to the point," Allen said. "Earth has been aware of alien civilizations for centuries. We've been monitoring your transmissions and know you claim to be peaceful explorers. So, I'll ask you once, why did you ignore the quarantine beacons placed around Earth space?" Primus swallowed hard. "Our world is dying. We didn't think we had a choice." Alan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Every species has its problems, but we cannot risk contamination from an unknown plague. You'll be held in quarantine until we decide whether we can release you, or if you need to be kept as prisoners indefinitely. For the safety of our secrets, you understand? Primus opened his mouth to protest, but a glare from the captain silenced him. The weight of their situation crashed down on the Daxamites. They had escaped one dying world, only to become captives on another, and the humans, it seemed, were far more dangerous than the legends had ever suggested. Primus and Zor-El found themselves confined to a sterile quarantine facility, under the watchful eyes of human guards and doctors. They underwent a battery of medical tests, needles drawing blood, and scanners probing their bodies. The humans fired question after question at them, demanding to know everything about Daxamite technology, culture, and intentions. As the interrogations dragged on, a disturbing picture emerged. The humans had been scavenging crashed alien ships for centuries, reverse engineering the advanced technology. They had built up a formidable arsenal in secret, preparing for the day when hostile aliens would arrive on their doorstep. Primus shook his head in disbelief. All this time we thought they were primitive, but they've been playing us for fools. Zor-El coughed, his face pale and sweaty. The legends were true, Primus. These humans, they're not like any species we've encountered before. Paranoid, aggressive, and far more advanced than we ever imagined. As if on cue, a team of doctors entered the room, clad in protective suits. They drew more blood samples and conferred in hushed tones, glancing at the Daxamites with a mix of fascination and fear. Captain Alan strode in, his face grim. "Your fleet has arrived in orbit. They're demanding your release and threatening action if we don't comply." Primus struggled to sit up, his body racked with tremors. The plague, it seemed, was taking hold, exacerbated by the stress of their capture. "Please, Captain, let me speak to them. I can convince them to stand down, to find a peaceful solution." Alan shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not possible. We can't risk this disease spreading to Earth until we understand it and have it contained. You'll remain in quarantine." Zor-El coughed, specks of blood dotting his lips. "But if you don't release us, our fleet will attack. Countless lives will be lost on both sides." "We're prepared for that eventuality," Alan said, his voice hard. "Earth has been readying for war with the stars for a long time. We'll do whatever it takes to protect our planet and our people." Primus slumped back onto the bed, despair washing over him. They had come to Earth seeking salvation, but instead they had brought the spectre of war to this world. And now, with the plague ravaging their bodies and the humans refusing to budge, it seemed that conflict was inevitable. Outside, klaxons began to blare as Earth's defenses mobilized. Pilots raced to their fighters, ground crews armed missiles, and commanders barked orders. In orbit, the Daxamite fleet began to move into attack formation, their weapons powering up. The stage was set for a battle that would shake the heavens, a war between the stars that had been centuries in the making. And at the heart of it all, 2 Daxamites lay trapped and dying, their fate intertwined with that of 2 worlds on the brink of annihilation. Primus knelt by Zor-El's bed, clasping his mentor's hand as the life drained from his body. The plague had ravaged Zor-El, leaving him a husk of the strong, wise Daxamite he once was. Zor-El's breaths came in short, painful gasps. His eyes fluttered open, fixing on Primus with a desperate intensity. "Primus," Zor-El wheezed, "you must stop this. War with the humans. It will be our end." Primus nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "I will, Zor-El, I promise. I'll find a way to make them see reason." Zor-El's grip tightened for a moment, then went slack. His chest stilled and a final breath escaped his lips. Primus bowed his head, grief and anger warring within him. The humans had brought them to this, with their paranoia and aggression. But he knew Zor-El was right. War would only lead to more death. Primus stood, a plan forming in his mind. He had to get a message to the Daxamite fleet, to warn them of the humans' capabilities and urge them to retreat. But first, he had to escape this prison. He waited until the guard brought his meal, then made his move. Primus slammed into the human, knocking him off balance. He grabbed the guard's weapon and stunned him with a quick shot. Then he was running, alarms blaring behind him. Primus ducked into a side room, finding himself in a communications center. He sealed the door and went to work, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. He recorded a hasty message, warning the fleet of the humans' advanced technology and begging them to withdraw. Then he transmitted it, praying it would reach them in time. The door shuddered as the humans tried to force it open. Primus braced himself, weapon at the ready. But when the door finally gave way, he was faced not with soldiers, but with Captain Allen himself. "Stand down," Allen ordered, his own weapon trained on Primus. "You've got nowhere to go." Primus laughed bitterly. "It doesn't matter. I've done what I needed to do. My people will leave this cursed planet and never return." Allen's eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid it's too late for that." He gestured to a view screen which flickered to life. Primus watched in horror as the Daxamite fleet engaged the human defenses, but the humans were ready, unleashing a storm of advanced weapons. Energy beams sliced through Daxamite ships, while swarms of drones harried them from all sides. The Daxamite ships fought back, but they were outmatched. One by one they fell, consumed by the humans' relentless onslaught. Primus felt each loss like a knife to his heart. Suddenly a new alarm sounded. Allen cursed, his eyes widening as he read the data on his wrist display. "Her bioweapon," he snarled. "Your people have launched a bioweapon at Earth?" Primus shook his head in disbelief. "No, that's not possible. We would never." But even as he spoke, he knew it was true. The Daxamite commander, driven by desperation and the need to save Primus, had resorted to the unthinkable. Allen barked orders into his comm, and the view screen shifted. Primus watched as a swarm of human ships converged on the bioweapon, releasing a cloud of glittering nanoparticles. The particles engulfed the weapon, breaking it down and rendering it harmless. Then the humans retaliated. A massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from their ships, washing over the remaining Daxamite fleet. The Daxamite ships went dark, their systems fried by the powerful blast. Primus fell to his knees, despair overwhelming him. It was over. His people, his world, everything he had fought for, all of it was lost. Allen stood over him, his face hard and unforgiving. "Your fleet is crippled. Your bioweapon has been neutralized, and now you will pay the price for your aggression." He spoke into his comm, his voice cold. "All units, open fire, destroy the Daxamite fleet. Leave no survivors." Primus looked up at him, pleading. "Please, no. They were only trying to save me, to save our world. Have mercy." But there was no mercy in Allen's eyes. "You should have thought of that before you came to Earth." On the view screen, the human ships unleashed a final, devastating barrage. The Daxamite ships shattered, consumed by the humans' weapons, until nothing remained but drifting debris. Primus watched it all, numb with shock and grief. He was the last of his kind, a prisoner on an alien world, haunted by the knowledge that his actions had led to the destruction of his people's last hope. And as the human soldiers dragged him away, back to the quarantine facility that would be his prison, Primus knew that the galaxy would remember this day, the day that Earth had shown its true face and sent a message to all who would dare to challenge it. The humans had won, and they would never let the galaxy forget it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.